So, I've noticed a couple of LIVE2D tutorial videos have all been within like 2024, 2023, maybe even 2022 or earlier when it comes to tutorials on how to use the program. So I wanted to give in some more recent input when it comes to the program for 2025. So what I'm going to do is, this is after organizing all of my layers, fixing all of my clipping masks and all that stuff, making all of my warp deformers, because all that process is still the same to this day as in other tutorials that you may see. I'm going to hide those two sets of bangs. I'm going to scroll down, and depending on which eye I want to use, whether it's the left or the right, technically this eye on our right is her left eye, and this one is her right eye. I don't care, but so this is my right, this is my left, so I named this one right, this one left, because it's too confusing otherwise, and I will mess up if I don't do it like this. And if I need to, I can always rename everything later. So, I'm going to go into my organized folder with the eyes. I'm going to take the top right lash line. I also have not put in the meshes yet, so that is something that I want to do. A lot of people say that you can auto mesh everything and then you can tweak some stuff later. I personally like to individually mesh all of the eye shapes as well as hair strands, but when it comes to the forearm or the arm or the thigh, all of those are perfectly fine to auto mesh. But I'm going to mesh this up, and I can show you guys what that looks like in fast forward mode. So this right here is just the outline. I'm then going to make a line in the center to make sure everything is all fine and dandy. I don't want to put in too many points because this isn't something that I'm personally going to be using the points for a lot. I'm mostly going to be using a different type of deformer. Why? Because I didn't put them there, but sometimes they just magically appear. So now, this is all set, so I can hit auto connect finally. And now I have this beautiful mesh going on. I can then take this tool up here. I can zoom in just a tad bit more, put one point just off the corner, another point in the center, at the edge of the eye, and then I'm going to do another one here and another one here. I'm actually going to put that one there, that one there. Less is more, but since I have a very interesting eye shape, it's not as simple as a line or a slight curve. This lash line has a lash attached to it. I need a little bit more when it comes to the little deforming bits. So I'm going to go to my right eye. I'm going to edit the parameter. I'm going to make it go from 0 to 1. When some people like to put it at -1 to 1, and some people like to put it to -1, 0, and +1 because they want to add in little expressions, but you can do those on something completely different parameter. But I'm going to take this right eye parameter, double check. This one says the right eye smile, but I want the right eye open. So what we can do to show that these are different, we can do R open, so that way it's, because sometimes you'll see in the tutorials that they have figured out how to make the text take priority over like this. Oh my gosh, I'm so smart. Anyway, but you can edit them, you can grow this, shrink this. I personally like to have it a little bit larger, but just enough to where I can see this. I'm also going to edit my L open parameter and just change it to L open, because in my opinion it's already in eyes. I don't think it needs to be labeled, and if it does I can always rename it. That's not a problem. So I'm going to put 2 forms on here. The far right is going to be open, and then the far left is going to be closed. So I'm going to take this little point, I'm going to bend it down. Same with this one. I'm going to make sure that they're not too funky, because sometimes they will behave oddly. For me, they like to sharp out like that. However, if you Control H, it'll get rid of that weird bounding box that gets annoying. You can also select individual points and move them around. Those are all still the same. If you're worried about the center line, you can move it from inside. That way those weird little corners can like just shrink down just a tiny bit more. Obviously, if you want to take more time to do this, you can. If you want to adjust all the things at once and smooth them out, you can use the tool to the right of the funky tool that we already used. If you also hold B and move your mouse to the left or to the right after left clicking, that still works as well, just like in previous versions. My biggest issue when it comes to the tutorials was finding the reflect motion option. It just never appeared for me. I had to do something completely different in order for it to work. So when I get to that point of the tutorial, I will display it. So now it can close, just that lid, but to make sure that I did it right, I'm going to open up the physics settings, go to pattern A, and notice how it stays open for the most part, and it blinks as a second option rather as holding. That's what you want. In my previous attempt, I had also made it to where the model would keep her eyes closed, and her blink was basically her opening her eye rather than, I don't know, closing it. This one also has the 4 corners, so I'm going to get rid of those. And this is the top lashes, not the lash line, but the lashes. I'm going to do that custom warp, because with this one, especially when you have them separated, and they're not touching by any pixels, it'll behave funky when you try to auto mesh it. So you do the same thing, you put the line through the middle, then you hit your select tool, so click off of that one. That way you can start a new path over here, and you don't have to worry about it having a funky line attaching them, because that's always a pain. Now I can auto-connect them. So they're not connected to each other, they are connected to themselves. Now I can also add the 2 points, and I can move these down. I want to personally flip, and then I'm going to hit shift as I move them down so they don't move off of that axis. And then I'm going to hit modeling, temporary deform tool, temporary path deformation. I'm going to add one here, add one here, add one there, and then I'm going to move it. It might behave weird, so if you want to, you can always just make sure that you have a couple extra points. This way you can move things around. It may behave like this, and if it does, you can always cancel that deformation and you can just rotate and make sure that you shift so it stays on the same axis. You might want to make things a little bit thinner for fun. Make sure it doesn't look too crazy. You can click off of it, close, and open. If it's not looking how you want, maybe lift it up a little bit, test things out. Personally, I don't need to move the bottom row of things at all. They're doing all that they need to down there. But I can then go to, say, the right side once again. So the eye white, I did indeed, I believe, I forgot to add the right iris to a clipping mask. No, I did. Okay. It just behaves weird. Okay. Well, I'm going to take the right eye white. I will indeed auto mesh this. I will put it to standard. But that doesn't look right to me. Yeah, deformation heavy is fine for me. I'm then going to add those 2 points once again. I'm going to take this big ol' guy, hit B, tap and move, and scrunch it all down. Make sure that everything is fitting inside of that lash line. All these little points. Obviously, you might have to adjust some things if they don't work out. Might have to re-pull some points out. That way it closes nice and neat. And as you can tell, the other parts of the iris, since they're clipping onto the iris and not to the eyelid, they stay wherever the iris is. So if you hit the right iris, you can typically auto mesh this one as well. There's standard, but I prefer to do deformation heavy. And then you'll be able to move it down. And then also warp it to where you want. If you notice that things are overlapping and meshing weird, you can always manually drag the points down. This way you don't have weird, I don't know how to describe it. This way, when you blink, the mesh doesn't go crazy, and instead it functions relatively well. Always make sure you get rid of that bounding box, because man, oh man, does it get annoying. So now when I open my eye, I didn't add. This is why, okay, so this is an example of why you always want to make sure that you add your key points, because otherwise you're permanently meshing the actual artwork, and you don't want that to happen. Okay, well, it's back together. It's fine. Everything's fine. This right here is a huge example of why you make sure you have your key points. So it lagged quite a bit, which is common for my computer, but it might not be common for yours. It is a very demanding program. Just like streaming, it takes up a lot of CPU. You might have to prioritize it or make sure you have as much storage as humanly possible. Or if your computer is just absolutely rocking, then you probably won't have any issues. But just like streaming, once again, making VTuber models is very, very intensive. Everything is very crazy. Now when it opens like that. I do need to edit the white. It has a little bit of stuff showing here and there. Right, there we go. I found the point. So when it opens, it does that. When it closes, it does that. Now, if we go to modeling and physics settings and we zoom on into that eye, hit pattern A, it should display a blink. Right now, I don't have anything else on this file. I don't have the jiggle physics. I don't have anything like that. Some people have a preference of whenever their eye closes, they like it to also kind of enlarge. So I'm going to take that iris, I'm going to make it larger. I'm going to edit those points down once again. And then I'm going to go back to physics settings, hit that pattern A, open it. So now when it closes, the iris also gets larger. So it does warp sometimes. If you don't keep everything perfectly aligned, once again, that is a big point of the model. And you might also get some little specs here and there, depending on how complex model is. You might want to make sure those aren't showing. Or you also depends on the price that you set on. Is it this model? Is it a gift? Is it a commission? Are there specific things that are required for this? Do you have a set value? And how much are you expecting to give your client? I can't think right now. It's too early in the morning for me. I'm typically still sleeping by now. But you have a close and you have an open. So now what we can do, that we have our close, there's also, for me, in this model, there is the eyelid. So I'm going to take the right eyelid, I'm going to auto mesh it heavy. A lot of people like to use standard. I like heavy because it gives me more to work with. I'm going to shift, drag it down just a tad, just enough to about where that eye is in height. Then I'm going to drag these points down so they connect with the lash line. now the eye opens, it closes nice and neat. There is another point that I want to get to in this video in specific, which is eye physics, and then I will go over the X and Y axis and looking around and whatnot in the next one. But for now, I want to open my physics folder, add a parameter. Well, for now it's going to be labeled as parameter 27, but in reality this one is the X jiggle, and then I'm going to replicate the parameter, and then this one is going to be the Y jiggle. And you don't want to have stray items on your keyforms because it can make it really, really wonky, really, really fast. So now that I've fixed that, when X is all the way to the right, I want to turn this into what I like to call a new deformer. It's not going to have a name because my naming system's not working right now, but it will eventually have a name whenever my keyboard works again, because right now it doesn't want to. So I'm going to take this at the largest, it has a very large box, but what you can do is you should be able to Control Alt, I think. Yeah, Control Alt, and then just Control, and then Control Alt, and then just Control. And now, finally, I can grow it, I can shrink it, I can go here, I can grow the eye, and I can shrink. And then when it's the smallest on both, and then when it's the largest on both. Now, say I were to do this, it does all that fun stuff. Now if I go to modeling, physics settings, I'm going to add a new group. I'm going to name it I_jiggle. I'm going to add the input of R open. I'm going to add the output of both of these physics settings. I'm going to just do a little blink to show you before, and then I want to add another pendulum for both of the outputs, make sure that they are aligned. I'm then going to make sure that the effectiveness for this one, you can only ever go up to 100 per thing. And then for this one, now, when the eye opens, it jiggles. You can be more specific with different parts of it, but this is just a quick little tutorial for the eye and the eye blink. If I hit pattern A, and have it blink. It doesn't do the jiggle naturally, but if I were to hit something like pattern B, it does give it that little bit of a jiggle. Or if I were to hit something like posing, whenever it moves, whenever it blinks, it randomly moves things, so you might not get something for a while if you only have one parameter done. And just like the eye blink. Eventually, when you reflect this over to the other side, which I will do after the XY video, it does have a reflect option, but I will go over that next time. You can also edit these parameters. I'm not going to in this video. I'll also go over those specifics in the next one. I'm going to remember to control save my file. That way everything is all set, all dandy, all nice, and I'm not going to lose my progress.